thank you everyone again for joining us today. We have a panel of amazing entrepreneurs ready to share what's going on with their businesses and give you some insight into how you can pivot your business or take on a new challenge. So facilitating our discussion today is Bunker Labs founder, Todd Connor. And so Todd, take it away.
All right, thanks Jada. Thanks everybody for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon. We were just grateful that you would take some minutes out of your busy and precious schedules with all the commitments happening at home and tune in to hopefully learn some things. And all we're here to do is share our perspective on things that we're doing. We have a fantastic panel of folks today, women who I consider personal friends, but also are leading the fight to support the military connected entrepreneurship communities. And so Jen, Megan, Misty, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to introduce you in time. I do want to underscore what Jada said, which is that the chat is open. So if you have questions, bring them. We have 4 folks, including myself, who run organizations that are helping entrepreneurs and small business owners. And so we're here to be of service to you in any way that we can. We are all kind of guided by that shared purpose. And we're doing this from our homes. You know, I've got a baby in the background. We've got real life happening just like you do. So I read a New York Times parenting article that said, you don't apologize for having your children interrupt. You just acknowledge that it may happen. So I don't apologize, but I do acknowledge it may happen because we're all living our lives amidst this global pandemic. So I'm going to start and I'm going to maybe, Misty, if I can begin with you. Misty runs a lot of the entrepreneurship programs for IVMF, but can you tell us just kind of what is IVMF? Tell us a little bit about the portfolio that you run. And then the $1 million question is like, what is this, how is this impacting IVMF today, this COVID crisis that we're in? Can you give us a perspective on that as well?
Yeah, so IVMF is a team of about 100 professionals that are in 21 states across the nation that do or work typically within one of 4 pillars. So we have entrepreneurship and small business, hence why I'm here today. We have our research, measurement, and evaluation team, our Onward to Opportunity team, which provides free certifications in on-demand career fields, as well as our AmericaServes team that institutionalizes referral networks to make sure that there's no wrong door for veterans that are needing services. For the entrepreneurship or the Arsenal portfolio specifically, I oversee a portfolio of 9 programs that meet entrepreneurs where they're at on their journey, whether that's ideation all the way up to growth. And then from there, we also have from transition to, you know, obviously well out of retirement or separation. With those programs, I also run 3 resource hubs with our Center of Excellence, our Coalition of Veteran-Owned Business, as well as our VetNet. So a lot going on within the portfolios, and therefore there's been a lot of adjustment during the COVID. I think for us it's pretty interesting, and Todd, I'm sure you feel much the same. You know, we have folks in different states, so we have folks that are being told different things by their governors, that there's different restrictions. So that's something that, you know, we're having to keep our thumb on several different pulses, because it's not just what's happening in Syracuse, New York, where we're based, right? And then on top of that, you know, typically our training that we do is very high touch in-person training, which is absolutely not adhering to social distancing rules. So we've had to flip everything from our EVV classes to get them online to we've had to change our Onward Opportunity and have successfully now hosted all of those online as well as, you know, many of our other training opportunities, including Boots to Business, where we have instructors that are sitting in New York now teaching classes in, you know, Korea, etc. So it's been a fun challenge to flip everything from in-person to online within 2 weeks, and it's been done. So, but I do think that we'll see. That's going to have some resonating effects, and we're going to, you know, obviously continue to flex to whatever the needs of our veterans and where they're at, because, you know, that's what we do as an entire organization.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Yeah, thanks, Misty. And we'll come back to you because I want to get your perspective on, I mean, there's so many threads of this, but like, what does this mean for military transition and
Yeah.
other things? So we'll come back to you on some of those questions as well. Okay, Megan Ogilvy runs Dog Tag Bakery, which is just an amazing institution in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., and obviously implicated by the COVID crisis. But Megan, can you talk a little bit more about what does Dog Tag do, and what are you doing amidst the challenges that we're all facing?
Sure. So like Todd said, my name is Megan, super excited to be here. So we run a nonprofit based in Georgetown. So we use actually a living business school of a bakery that we run to teach entrepreneurship and small business to veterans that have service-connected disabilities, military spouses, and military caregivers. What we've actually evolved to is that, we partner with Georgetown University. So in a classroom that sits above the bakery, our fellows go through 7 courses taught by Georgetown professors. So at the end of the 5-month fellowship program, it culminates to earning a certificate in business administration from Georgetown School of Continuing Studies. Then they get the experiential learning of actually rotating through all different facets of the business and the organization. And then we bring our partners in, Learning Lab partners to come in, where we've had IVMF and Patriot Bootcamp and Bunker Labs all be partners throughout that process, just to be about like building the network and the resources and just being really, introduced to new opportunities that are out there that you might not know otherwise. So our whole goal is to help our fellows that go through the program really develop a calculated risk, building a plan forward, testing that model out, and then being able to learn to pivot and move forward. And it helps redefine going through the process of what does it mean to be successful now outside the military? Or what does it mean to really have purpose now that I'm moving forward, not necessarily with the military, but as a civilian. And so, it's interesting time for us as just like Missy mentioned, and I know Jen will speak to, is we are one of the aspects and the strengths of our program is that it's 5 months in person. It's like an in-residence program. So I think all of us can speak to, though, in teaching and learning about entrepreneurship and small business. 8 years ago, I was part of Dog Tag when I joined, and it was just an idea. And so I think when you go through the process of starting an organization and business, the natural tendencies and values you have to have are really based on tenacity and being nimble and flexible and building a resilience. And so, during the time right now, a very similar situation, we ended up starting in March 12th, we started limiting hours. And by March 30th, we had shut down all operations. And that had gone through a series of decision-making and and basically looking at different indicators to help us make and levers for decisions. And then within a week, we had our whole program online. So our team members, my colleagues that were working from home, were now teaching their rotation, everything from finance and accounting to bakery operations. And then all of our Learning Lab partners went virtual. Education went online as well. And so we continue to run our fellowship program today. We have graduation at the end of May. And we're going to continue to look to adapt and overcome, and looking at the cohort 12 that starts in July and how it's going to be run. And I think what you have to learn is, in running an organization or a business, is that you may love the idea, but if it's not viable anymore, it's a moot point, right? So if we want to run a fellowship program, you have to really think to what is the new normal and how do you adhere to it, and how do you be flexible, recognize that you still want to serve your mission, and you kind of have to reinvent yourself. So we're going through that right now, and I'm sure a lot of you that are on this call right now are doing the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all being sort of tested as entrepreneurs to sort of pivot and meet the moment, which is what entrepreneurs have to do, including those organizations that support entrepreneurs.
Yep.
Jen is the CEO of Patriot Bootcamp, which is a fantastic organization that we obviously partner with. We all work together. But Jen, can you talk to us about what is Patriot Bootcamp, and also kind of what are you guys doing amidst the challenges that we're all facing?
Yeah, thanks, Todd. And thanks for pulling us all together, and Liz behind the scenes. I think it's important to mention to our whole community out there that while we're together on the camera today, actually all of us have been in touch a lot over the past month, which feels like 6 months, to just really connect and share behind the scenes the best resources for our whole entire community. So I know all of us are committed, with, even though we're different organizations, that all of us are saying we're here for the entire community, whether you've never attended a Bunker or PBC or IVMF or Dog Tag at this point, doesn't matter.
We're all here for you, and we're all trying to connect behind the scenes too to bring it to you. So we are also a nonprofit started by Taylor McLemore back in 2012. I learned about this program being an entrepreneur. I applied for it myself in 2013 with my former company, Military One Click, and I was accepted to the program and fell in love with it. We accept about 50 entrepreneurs at a time. It can be active duty, reserve, guard, veterans, caregivers, and spouses. And it's also, as we're all talking about right now, traditionally an in-person program. It's a 3-day intensive boot camp with speakers and workshops. But then the heart of Patriot Boot Camp is really with our mentorship program. So the reason we have only 50 come to each boot camp is because we also bring in about 50 mentors. These can be subject matter experts, speakers, entrepreneurs that volunteer their time and travel to come to our boot camps. And then we match them up one-on-one with each of our 50 mentors. So by the end of the 3-day weekend, each one of our participants have met with 8 different specialty mentors. And if you ask any PBC alumni, we have now about 1,000 of them. That's really the thing that makes PBC stand out. So with, like all of us, an in-person program, we actually, and some of you, I called and texted early March. Our big 3-day program was scheduled for March. Misty's shaking her head. I was like, Misty, March 5th through 7th, San Francisco, the entire thing planned program, about 150 people landing in San Fran from out of state, on March 4th. And here we are, March 3rd, finding out San Francisco went under a state of emergency, meeting with my phenomenal board. But this is what all of us are facing across the country as leaders of your organization, of our own. Making these tough calls right now are hard and heart-wrenching. 1 week later, it would have been a no-brainer. But like all of us on the call today, people come first, and we were not willing to take the risk to fly people into an area that was already lighting up. So we made the call, and we got a hold of 150 people in 7 hours and confirmed with them, voice or email, and then quickly dismantling a 6-month program of plans within 3 days. And then we, like everybody on this phone and everybody who's listening, pivoted, moved forward, and we have since set up virtual mentoring where our mentors came right away saying, yes, I will do it anytime, anywhere. And Dania on our team is setting that up as we speak to still fulfill those mentor requirements or opportunities. And then when we get back to whatever new normal is, we hope to continue virtual programming and in-person programming. I think it's here to stay. So, but we're a small, mighty team. Sherry Rice is our COO. She's been there since day one. Dania Devine is our Director of Programs, and Barb Harputer, who's stationed in Germany, who's tuning in late right now, I'm sure. She's our Director of Media and Community, and myself.
That's awesome. And all of you have such amazing teams. None of us do this alone. So we have amazing teams that are behind us, that were in front of us, supporting the work. So thanks, Jen. And each of you underscored a theme around, a quick pivot, adapting to the virtual environment. What are you hearing? And maybe Jen, I'll just start with you, and then Megan will go to you, and then to Misty. But what are you hearing from the small business community? I mean, we're all hearing a lot, but I think it'd be helpful to hear some anecdotes as to, are people, feeling like they want to stay in the fight, get out, PPP, there's a lot of kind of variables swirling around. Would love to hear some perspectives from each of you. Jen, if you want to start.
Thanks. So yeah, you're making the Jersey girl go first, so I can lay it out there. I actually texted Misty and Megan beforehand. I'm like, are we going really brutally honest on this? And we're like, yes, we all need it. And I said, it's interesting that we're here on camera, but all of us are also in the trenches. We are all behind the scenes connecting with each other. Patriot Boot Camp has tried to apply for the PPP. We still don't have it. So I think that's what's interesting and why we have so much empathy for what's going on right now is we are all in the same boat. We all are trying to keep going and staying afloat and serving our community. And what our community is telling us is what we're mirroring also. For sure, financial is the biggest risk and problem right now. While we can all get into marketing and advertising and all that stuff, at the end of the day, real cash is going to keep the lights on. So we're trying to also quickly build up our virtual programming to hit on this. We're doing these Thursday live lunch and learns. We did one with Bunker last week and Nick and Randy Nelson, and we did one the week before with JJ Montanaro from USAA to talk specifically about finances first. You've got to get that in order, and for sure that's what we're hearing across the board is the struggle for our companies that haven't even had a chance to put their application in to a financial institution, let alone then it be accepted at SBA. So I won't go down the rabbit hole. I'll just say that we feel your pain. And to me, financial is right now, it's literally crucial to everybody's business. So beyond these next few hours with PPP, because I have a feeling it'll run out again if I haven't turned on the news, if it hasn't already, what's the next steps? And I'd love to hear from everybody on the panel the next steps, but we're trying to first educate on what is the best next step before jumping. And that's our goal right now with our virtual live webinars on Thursdays.
Great, thanks, Jen. Yeah, and I just appreciate the candor and the transparency of the challenges of running an organization amidst this environment. And I know that we've got some fantastic sponsors. I'm going to give a shout out to USAA in particular, who folks that are buckling down to sort of say we'll be with you through this. But no one is not implicated, and I think we can attest to that. And certainly the PPP is a whole conversation as well, and we're trying to continue to get smart on that. Megan, I want to go to you. I think if we think about some of the most implicated industries, it's retail, restaurants and bakeries, which is sort of the work that you do in addition to the training and work and support that you give to aspiring entrepreneurs. What's your forecast for dog tag? When do we get back to business as normal, but maybe more broadly, the sector that you're in?
Sure. So, again, one of the first things that we did as an organization, and Jen hit on, is, cash is king. Like, what's your cash on hand? And there's, we have a duality. We are a nonprofit, but, under the nonprofit is a bakery. So, there's allocation of funds that are, restricted funds as well. And so one of the first things we said is that, one, how much is the cash on hand? What are the expenses we have to pay? What are the baseline expenses that without a doubt we can't not afford to pay? What's the payroll? And then it really goes down to what's your burn rate and what's your runway? And I think, you can have the best business, the best everything, but if you don't know that information about your organization, you can't make sound decisions about what it looks like to move forward. So, the number one thing for us is, what are our financials? What does it look like? And how do we use that as data versus just emotional decisions, about how we go forward? And I think that's something that, and then, we had to really think through. And then what is the communications of that? What is that communications internal? What is the communications to stakeholders? And for us, stakeholders can be my colleagues, our team members. It could be our customers. It could be our fellows. It could be alumni. It could be donors. It can be learning lab partners. You have to really think about the communications that you put out. So the implications of us saying, reducing hours, well, does that imply the fellowship is too? So we really had to go through a thorough thought process of the communication plan of, like, how do we make sure that our community as a whole understands the process we're going through? And we had to realize, think of the tone. For us, our decisions were made by data and making sure the health and wellness of our community was at hand. And so, it was something that, again, I really credit my colleagues, my team members that were really just, into this day, to this moment, are really working exceptionally hard to really think through this process of building a financial tool. So one of the first things we also did was we basically showed our phased approach and talked through some of our financial tools with our alumni. We sent them, an Excel document that had one tab explaining the process, Next tab was expenses. The next tab was revenue streams. And then the third tab was the ability to kind of see how that would plan out and build a timeline. So I think right now, one of the things that we're hearing from our alumni, from just the community at large, are exactly like, we need tools. You know, there are startups out there. There are people that are just starting, and, you know, they might not have a community bank that they've been using. You know, I think right now in general, this is, you know, the PPP, or just, I mean, everything was the first time. It was the first time SBA was doing it. It's the first time treasurers were doing it. First time banks were taking this on. And so, to be honest with you, you know, I think it's kind of coming together for best practices at the same time as just also finding ways of utilizing others for support. So how can we maximize? So one of the first things we did as a bakery is we partnered with the restaurant next to us. As they were selling out their $20 burger, they were then putting on a dog tag brownie to include it. You know, you have to think smart also. One of the first things we did, we stopped ordering ingredients. Our COGS, you know, number one cost is payroll. The second is COGS. So we had to go through this, you know, process. And so I really urge everyone on this call to do that. What are your biggest expenses? And then how does that imply, you know, and how does that affect your revenue stream? And then you have to look at your revenue stream and saying, is that revenue stream like going to be sustainable? Is that going to continue? So as nonprofits, I know all of us on here are recognizing that the giving nonprofit space is going to change. And that's the struggle of nonprofit, you know, is that it changes based on kind of the current status of, you know, natural disasters or anything that, you know, that could come up. So as a small business, a bakery, you know, I don't know how our community is going to react to being inside a building, you know, waiting in line next to each other, buy products that are, you know, we don't know as a you know, hospitality, you know, community, how it's really going to go down. So what we have to do is, I heard a great quote. It's not about really building a plan. It's about building processes, right? We don't have a lot of information. We like build a timeline, but we don't have the end date, right? Build this, but we don't actually know what like the you know, end goal is, because right now we're building it till what, September, January 1. So our goal as an organization, and what we're trying to make sure our fellows know as well, in alumni, is really to build a process in multiple processes with, you know, limited scenarios. You can't build out for every scenario, but kind of best, worst, or best, middle, and lowest. And then be able to like build the processes for that, knowing that you're going to have to navigate through them. So, you know, we are building that process to open back the bakery, you know, obviously in a phased approach, but there's costs that incur during that. So, you know, knowing your financials is absolutely key. And then knowing how you communicate it to your community. You know, the first time someone makes an assumption is the first step towards chaos. And at that point, you've kind of lost control. And so you have to have hard discussions. And sometimes the discussion is saying, I don't know what's going to happen next week, but this is how we're approaching it. And what I can tell you is that, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you're going to get an email from me advising what the next steps look like. And that was from my team. And that was also my board of directors. Because the first thing we did is we had a board meeting. We had a finance call, and then we had a board meeting that Saturday, the 14th. And it was solely COVID-19 financial planning. That's it. And the different scenarios. So, you know, you have to just think through that process. And the more data you have, the better plan you can build and build out those processes.
Mm-hmm. There's so many nuggets of wisdom what you share, Megan. And I think this notion of kind of financial literacy around your business, you're having a really clear picture of your cash flows, and then planning for the known unknowns. So we don't know when we're going to sort of resume to normal, but we can have scenarios that sort of speak to sort of best case, which I think in all of our cases is probably not a great case. It's still a pessimistic case, but best case, worst case, worst case to plan. So good insights. Thanks, Megan. Misty, let me ask you, what are you seeing in terms of the small business community? What are you hearing from the entrepreneurs? What's sort of, are there themes that are emerging for you in talking to entrepreneurs?
You know, I think, you know, and as you know, like we've done a lot of research before. We're currently doing research now with our, you know, Kaufman survey. I think that before, right, you heard that the top 3 challenges when we did our Operation Entrepreneurship, right, was access to capital, social networks, and mentoring. I think right now that those are still all the top challenges. They're just now like screening challenges. Like before, where it was kind of like, here are considerations and you need to think about this and you need to figure out how you do this with the business. Now it's like, you don't have an option, this is a big deal. So I think what you're seeing with, companies is that they're terrified of the financial implications. If you look at this, I think that we often say, and it's part of us to say, hey, when we all get back to normal, I don't think there's gonna be a normal on the other side. I think that it's gonna be very much a new normal. I think that, folks are going to shop differently. I think that people are going to have a different attitude about what they're looking for and how they're looking for it. And I think they're going to expect it to be delivered in a different package than it's been delivered before. So I think that a lot of companies right now are saying, hey, Missy, the number one question that we're getting right now is, not only clarification around what should I be doing with all the financial parts and, does it make sense for me? But the other biggest question right now is actually getting questions around networks. So I'm getting asked for a lot of, I've now identified this as our next opportunity. Who do you know in this area? Now I've now identified that I've got to pivot and go here. Who's your next person? So I think that, that's a huge thing that companies are thinking about. Another thing that, we're starting to get asked a lot about is, well, the world's opening up, so that's going to be great, and we can't wait for that. So what should I be thinking of now? And, we did a webinar on it last week. We're going to do another webinar next week. Quite frankly, though, I don't think that that's the end all be all. I think, Georgia's turning back on, but it means that now those business owners have to turn around and start paying rent. And those business owners are expected to show back up into an environment where they're being asked to do business in a different way and have different precautions and different safety, but be open and act like their finances are completely normal. And they're not. And I think that then what it's going to happen is that those that are relying on contractors who are typically the first to be let go, or those that are relying on online orders, or, Georgia's back in, so they're immediately going to get on and see that dog tag is closed and then not be able to, rely on something that they thought they were going to rely on. And I think that that's the hard part, is that folks are going to have to realize that, every single day that this is going on, it changes. And so I think that what we're seeing a lot of is the advice that I gave people 2 weeks ago is now different from the advice that I'm going to give people today, and now different from the advice that I'm going to give in 2 weeks. So I think that, what we have to look at, and the way that IVMF is looking at this at the moment is, there's going to be 3 phases, right? Right now we're all in response. So we are figuring out, what data do we have? It's not much. What can we make of that? What do we need to be doing? Soon, hopefully, we'll start moving into what recovery looks like. What does the new normal look like? What are the small pivots that we as an organization need to make? What are the small pivots that we can help business owners make? Realizing who their new customers are, what their new sales avenues are, everything like that. And then at some point, we're going to go into resurgence. So with resurgence, you'll see new industries being born. You'll see companies that used to be juggernauts are probably going to be taken apart a little bit, and companies that people used to never really rely on. Zoom is all of a sudden going to be a huge thing that we can all do. So I think that, business owners need to start thinking of, back to the plan that, Megan and Jen were talking about, what do those 3 parts look like for you? And then how do you continuously adjust against that? Because, much like everyone else is, we're hearing those same exact challenges. And, as Jen said before, we're right there in the trenches too. Like, we're looking at, what does next year look like for, our donors and our people and our events, and how does that all look? And then honestly, we tailor each program specifically. If you sign up for anything from us, we ask you what your challenges are, because we tailor it specifically to your challenges. So what is that tailoring going to look like, and what are those challenges going to be? And are we going to see the same type of people starting up companies? And so I think that, it's going to be extremely interesting. But I think you have to look at, luckily, we're all extremely blessed with who we work with, right? Because we work with the quintessential crew that's ready for pivot and adaptability. So if you look at the military, it's like they're born for, this type of business and this type of area. If you look at those military spouses, they're like, have you ever PCS? Like, I got this. Like, so I feel like, it's good that we're working with that crew, but I think now more than ever, making those connections to, the people and the resources and the programs are going to be so important, because everyone else is going to, all the other challenges are still going to be there. Those top challenges are always going to be there. And right now it's just exemplified. So I think we all have to figure out as a group, how do we take the laboring oar, move in the same direction, and then make sure that everyone's connected to what they need to be connected to make sure that things move forward. And I've seen some of my companies thrive. I mean, I'm going to be talking to an entrepreneur tomorrow that within all this madness has booked, $1.5 million in new business. Like, that's huge. That's an entire year's worth of business for him. I have another company that, God bless him, opened up a restaurant the month before COVID hit. So you would think that he would be decimated. And weirdly enough, he's thriving because he was able to flip to a to-go model with his crazy gluten-free vegan situation because no one can find that anywhere. So, it's very interesting to me to see some of that as well. But I think that, I think it's going to be people that get people through this pandemic at this point.
Yeah.
And I think just to add to that, I think what we have to also realize is that there's conversation of this happening again in the fall, right? So I think what we should be doing is using this as an operating model for opening up and shutting back down again.
It's like a dress rehearsal.
Right. But everyone says you should have a contingency plan for if something horrific happens and you have to shut down your business and everyone goes remote. This is what they say as an organization, as a business, you should plan for. So what I'd say is that, I see some questions saying, how should we plan for the phases? Is I think you should start building best practices in the sense is when you're thinking of these phases, what's working, what's not working, because we might have to do this again in the fall in some fashion. So, this is an ability to really build a blueprint and a plan towards that. Until there's a vaccine, until there's more information, we're just going to have to stay nimble and just react to what information is given to us and opportunities are ahead of us. But, there's value in learning this and then just, again, being prepared for the up and down that this could be for the next 6, 12, 18 months or whatever it might be in our small business community and veteran community as well.
That's great. Lisa Carmichael, who's tuning in, offered a comment, and I think it's a great one, which is sort of around the language of the new normal. And she's saying, that our mental model, or maybe I'm putting words in her mouth, but our mental model shouldn't just be when do we go back to normal, that there is sort of no return to what was, but what we can hope to do is create a new normal, and maybe a new normal that's anchored in being resilient. And sort of this scenario-driven agility or seasonal businesses that we would have never thought of previously as seasonal. Jen, I'm going to start with you, but what are you forecasting? What is the new normal in 18 months? Where will we go back to normal? And I keep wrestling with this in the fundamentals of, relationships with people was always going to matter, networking, if you will. But is it in person? How are we doing it? So how do you think about what's your forecast for what it looks like in 18 months for us?
Yeah, thanks. So we have on the books right now our 3-day program in person scheduled for Ohio in October. So that's the magic question. What do we do? So what we did is exactly what everybody's saying on here is we got super tactical. The team jumped on and really worked backwards from that date on a go, no-go plan. And really at the end of the day, you have to decide at what point are you spending money going out the door on things that you cannot get back, like t-shirts, whatever it is. We have now this, awesome document that by June, we have to make a go, no-go decision and we got to stick to it because I never want to be in the situation again, and no one else does, 3-4 days out from a massive in-person program where it was the domino effect. Everybody had to fight to get their rooms canceled and their airlines. And, you just feel terrible about that. So my advice is for everybody that has a potential target date of return, build backwards and start to put costs against it, because there's a lot of things you can do that don't really have cost to them. Once you start ordering that you can't return, that's money lost. So that's our biggest way of planning for in-person. I also agree with you guys. I think we're going to be in this virtual remote world for a while. All of our organizations are built on people in close quarters. There's no way any of us can go back to a conference and stand 6 feet away. I mean, we're all going to want to hug Todd and that adorable little baby that people want to see Todd right now. You have him a little bit lower than the screen. And I don't know if he's sharing his debut or not.
He keeps raising his hand. Yeah.
But I think we're thinking through a few things. One, is that model going to be viable 6 months from now, honestly, I'm not so sure. Second thing, these are people that had to struggle hard to rub two nickels together to travel to all of our conferences anyway. You know, all of our programs are free, but people have to pay for travel to get to them. Are they going to be in a position with their business that the first thing they're going to want to do is fly to any one of our programs and convince their spouse that that's the best use of money right now? So we are building our virtual programs today for the long haul. It's not a patch, it's not a Band-Aid. It's like this finally gave us an opportunity to do something we've wanted to do for a long time. Then 2021 will be the hybrid of both. And then who knows whether all in person comes back, all virtual, or both. But I can tell you that Google Docs, as you guys know, is literally your team's best friend. We're constantly in there tweaking, just like Misty said, week by week, things we tweak and change and tweak and change and tweak and change. So, but I feel bad. I saw over in the chats, our poor San Francisco cohort, they're so excited, so close. But we are in contact with them and we're like, we're going to do everything we can. And they were so cute because they're like, well, if I take the mentoring now, does that mean I can't go once you reschedule it? No, when we reschedule it in person, you're there. When we have Ohio, you first on the list, like, and I know that's how we all operate. But in the meantime, you've got to really look at the numbers, finances, and your go, no go plan for that goal date. And at some point you just gotta make the decision, and we're gonna have to make it pretty soon on whether we push forward with Ohio, because I'm not gonna be in the same position again when, like, we have the data in front of us that it might not look good. We might be getting better, but to hold 150 people in one place, I'm not so sure yet.
Mm-hmm. I want to acknowledge a comment from Rob Wood. He says, perhaps the new business model planning will include lessons learned from this. It may drive business choices such as outdoor areas or business operations for customers. I think that's really smart and interesting. You know, we talked a lot about the minimum viable product, but we start talking about the minimum resilient, you know, business, or, you know, how are we going to begin to factor? Will investors have a different view of like cash on hand and runway versus sort of other metrics? And I think there's kind of all those questions. Let me ask, someone's asking specifically about nonprofits, and that's a big, I know, part of the community that we serve. I think the IVMF number is something like 22% of veterans want to start nonprofits of the entrepreneurs. So what does this mean for nonprofits? Megan or Misty, what's changed as it relates to starting a nonprofit in this environment? What's maybe not changed in your view?
I think, you know, I think at the end of the day, like everything that we have to look in terms of business right now, and Jen definitely hit on it thematically, like you have to be passionate about the problem and not the process or the product, right? So, and I think that that's something that allows us to divorce ourselves of some of these programs and realize like, okay, maybe I am going to have to switch. And I think for nonprofits, what I'm going to go ahead and say is that I think that we're going to see a lot of consolidation through this right now. I think that through the swell of, you know, let the good times roll, and we've had a great swell for the past years, and I think that we've seen a lot of organizations pop up, and I think we're about to see a lot of consolidation through this time. I will say that I do think that, you know, folks will still need these services, especially now more than ever, and some of these, you know, nonprofits and what they do, you know, specifically around, you know, some of the things that we talked about earlier. So, you know, finances and everything that entails, right? So rent, utilities, jobs, I mean, the whole deal. Like, I think we're going to see a lot of folks are going to need that. So I think what's going to happen is nonprofits more than ever are going to be asked to do a heck of a lot more with a heck of a lot less, as per usual. And so I think that that's going to be the whole kind of test of some of these folks is, you know, how do we start building in, you know, the ability to answer the call without getting any more resources? How do we, change our processes and make sure that we can meet the needs of those that we serve. Because I do think that, a lot of the groups that are, that are out there, you're going to see kind of that number fall and the pressure be put on some other folks. I do think that it is an opportunity for those that can pivot and that can answer that and can say, look, I can add, to your ability to process claims, better, faster, cheaper. I think that that's going to be a huge opportunity for folks out there right now. And so I think that folks really more so than ever, and that's always the number one question I say when I talk to a nonprofit, is there someone else out there doing this, and are they doing it better than you? Because if they are, like, you need to join their ranks. So I think that now, more than ever, those folks that are thinking about, like, okay, what can I start and what can I do, have really got to answer that question. Because if you're not, helping those nonprofits add to any of those things, then quite frankly, more so than ever, there's just not going to be the ability to support a lot of different groups. And so I think that that's the thing that we all just have to remind ourselves, that we're passionate about the problem, and that is what we have to rally around, because I think that that'll help folks find where they need to land in order to help solve that problem.
Yeah. And for each of you and the organizations that you run, certainly veterans are still going to be getting out of the military. They're still going to have dreams of starting their own business. They're still going to need networks and support. Military spouses are going to, be out and needing things. So, and frankly, our sponsors are going to have a desire to have an impact in the community. So if all that is still true, then really it's just about how do you bring that, to light, right, in a way that sort of meets those needs. Megan, what's your forecast on? Would you be starting a nonprofit right now? What's your forecast on?
I echo what, Misty says. We're basically, with our fellowship, it's along those lines of, if you can name 5 of the organizations that do similar work that you want to do and you value it, then tell me how you're going to fundraise better than them, because they're already ahead of the game. And, I used to work in finance in New York, and then when I came to DC and helped start, Dog Tag with Father Curry and Connie, I deal with money more now than I did in finance in New York. And so that's the truth, though. So I think for us, we recognize that, I think you have to, there's a mourning phase, right? And there's a grieving phase of what was. And I think once you allow yourself to go through that, then you're allowed to start really thinking innovatively, because everything has changed. It really has. And I think you have to allow yourself to go through that recognition. I went through it 2 weeks ago in my own mental breakdown at different times. But why, you're kind of fighting it and you can feel it. And I think what we have to also realize is giving, there's no shortage of good causes out there prior to this. And now there's, in some ways a more focused and centralized need, I'd say. So for our organization, there is no other option, right? We are going to persevere through this, but I think we're going to recognize that, we can't be tone deaf to the situation. And we have to recognize that, like Misty said and Jen said, we're still running our fellowship, not because we want to run it, but because we asked our fellows and they said, listen, this provides value every day. It gives me, it gives me structure. It gives me hope for the future and what I can do once I get out of here. It gives me purpose. And so as long as we continue to serve our mission, we will make sure to be innovative and adaptive to the times today. And when we look at funders and sponsors, we need to make sure that, there's an understanding between the two, that we are still coming together to solve a problem together versus just, solving for a program that a funder might be interested in, or solving for something along those lines. And again, I think as nonprofits, we're just going to have to be, the ROI, and everyone's a little bit cautious of using that in nonprofit, I understand, but there has to be a clear understanding of what the investment's really going towards, because, the space in general, it's, you don't get into nonprofit to be a billionaire. You get into it because you're so passionate about solving a societal need that you can't do anything else. And so I think, you really have to have that ideology of saying, we will get through this, but we're gonna follow the mission and who we support versus the process that we've created to do it. And that that might mean that you're no longer able to do it, and that's a hard reality. But we're all facing hard realities right now. So that's being a smart individual. It's being a smart organization. And that's making sure you're serving, the demographic you want to serve well.
Great. Now, I think one of the things that's happening in this time is this reconciliation of partnerships going deep, fast, kind of radical transparency being created, and I think an acceleration of things that were providing value, and a deceleration of things that were maybe not providing value. So all of that is happening in accelerated speed. But I'm grateful that I think those organizations, and I think IVMF, Dog Tag, and Patriot Bootcamp are among them, leading, which is the organizations that are really close to their customers are gonna, hear what the customers need and pivot and meet the moment. And I think that's it's a great, and not without challenges, but that's sort of the lesson for entrepreneurs in this moment. So you guys have been absolutely fantastic. I do want to honor time. I appreciate everyone's allowance for babies in the background and the rest of it. I said it at the outset. I won't apologize. I guess I did apologize. I said I wouldn't apologize, but anyway, there's babies and there's a life, and we're here to support you. So for those that were in the chat with questions, we will follow up with you. Bunker Labs will follow up with you. And there was a lot that we didn't get to, but again, great discussion, and thank the three of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you everyone for joining
Stay
us.
safe.
Give a virtual round of applause for our panelists and our moderator today. So thank you, Misty, Jen, Megan, and Todd for sharing all of that great information and encouragement for all of our businesses out there. As Misty said, it's going to take people to help and get this back together and get our world back to some sort of a new normal. So lean on each other and count on one another during these times, and know that you have the Bunker Labs community here to support you guys as well. So thank you again for joining us, and stay all in, and we'll see you guys at our next town hall. Take care.